It's a pleasure for me to welcome everyone to the meeting. I don't know where Paul has gone. I suspect she's gone cruising, so it's all right for some, I must admit, and she's left me holding a baby instead, but there we are. Before we actually start the meeting, what I would like to do is ask everybody in the room, all four of us, to identify ourselves so that anybody who's online will know exactly who's here. So just to start it off, I'll say I'm Paxton Hood-Williams, chairing this meeting this afternoon. David?
David Roberts, lay member.
And?
Jeremy Parkhouse, Democratic Services.
Okay, thank you. So it's a real pleasure to welcome everybody to this meeting, as I've already said. I'll now move on to the agenda. Item 1 is apologies for absence.
Thank you, Chair. Apologies from Paula O'Connor, Councillor Jeff Jones and Councillor Mike Lewis.
Anybody got disclosures of personal interest that they would like to make, please? Sorry, I thought Julie, you might want to.
Oh, yes, sorry, I raised my hand, Chair. Yes, I'd like to declare a personal interest in agenda item number 6, please.
And similarly, I have to declare interest in the same item myself, as I know one of the officers who are coming in to talk to us. Thank you. Item 3 is the minutes of the last meeting. You've all had a chance to have a good look at them. I don't know if anybody's got any queries they want to raise. If they do, please raise your hands. In that case, I'll assume that everybody's satisfied, unless you say different, in that case, I'll say minutes have been approved. I'm going to sign them afterwards. We move straight on to the reports for discussion. Internal Audit Annual Report, first of all, 2024-25, and I suspect, Simon, you're going to present this for us?
Yes, thanks, Chair. I'll present this report, thanks. Okay, so good afternoon, everybody. This is the Internal Audit Annual Report for 24-25. It summarises the work of the team throughout the year, as has been reported in the quarterly monitoring reports to the committee throughout the year. To summarise the review for 24-25 in section 2, the audit plan for 24-25 had 120 activities on it, and 76% of those had been completed to at least draft report stage by the end of the financial year, which is a good result. A copy of the status of the plan can be found in Appendix 1 of the report. And of those reports that were issued, 69 reports in total with an opinion. 45% of those had a high assurance level, and 51% of them had a substantial assurance level. So overall, 96% of all reports issued in year received a positive level of assurance, which is reassuring and a positive outcome. In total, 452 recommendations were made, and all of those were accepted by client departments. So again, there's 100% acceptance of all recommendations made. Again, another positive result. As I've noted in the quarterly monitoring reports, we have had some sickness and vacancies during the year. In total, as shown in 2.8, that totaled about 361 days across the year, which represented about 15% of the total resources available. So to achieve 76% completion with those challenges is a very good result for the team. Obviously, I'd like to thank the team for their hard work throughout the year in achieving those goals. And it's a really good result for us generally. Not ideal, but given the circumstances, it is a good positive outcome, and I thank the team for their efforts. Section 4 outlines some performance indicators that we use to assess performance as a team. Those are shown in Appendix 3 of the report, and again, the team met all 7 of their target PIs in year as well, so again, another positive message. Section 5 outlines the quality assurance and improvement programme that we need to have in place as required by the public sector standards, and also the global standards as well. Committee will be aware that the public sector standards were in place up until the 31st of March 2025, so they are still relevant to this report and this assessment, and obviously the global standards then came in from the 1st of April. So officers members will remember the second external review that we had to assess compliance was by Blenheim Gwent about a year ago. And as outlined in section 5.7, we were assessed as being compliant with 303 of the 304 requirements of those standards. And that still applies. My internal assessment for 24-25 still, assesses that as more or less fully compliant, bar the one issue with IT resource, which is being looked at as throughout 25-26. So as shown in 5.8, I can confirm that the internal audit section was compliant with the public sector standards throughout the year as relevant. Again, as I mentioned, the global standards came in from the 1st of April, as you've been briefed in previous update reports. Very similar to the public sector standards, nothing really that different in terms of the principles, just a bit more detail really. Previously, SIPFA had issued a detailed checklist for me to assess compliance against the public sector standards. I'm still waiting for that detailed checklist from SIPFA at this point. So in the absence of that checklist, I created my own based on the new global standards and also an application note. SIPFA issued an application note to all local government internal audit sections. It basically guiding local authorities on how to implement the code, so the global standards in a public sector setting. So the checklist encompasses the generic global standards and also the application note. So my internal assessment of compliance was completed in March. That was reviewed and confirmed by the Director of Finance and the Section 151 officer. So I can confirm, again, we are compliant with the global standards and the application note. There were some areas that we could strengthen compliance that were noted, and that's been put into an action plan as shown in Appendix 5. But there's no significant deviations from the global standards or the application note that I need to flag. I'm more than content that we are compliant. There are some areas of improvement, which we are going to work through 25-26, as shown in the action plan in Appendix 5 of the report. In addition to those, we've also got a new code of practice. I know this is a lot to get your head around, guys, so just bear with me. A new code of practice was issued by SIPFA. It's designed to work alongside the new global standards. It basically guides local authorities on how to comply with Domain 3 of the global standards, which covers the governance of the internal audit section. So it looks at the overall governance, overarching control of the CMT, the committee, etc. So again, I put a very detailed checklist together to outline the requirements of that code. That checklist was reviewed and confirmed by CMT in February 2025, just to make sure they were agreeing to what I had assessed compliance against. And again, I can confirm we are compliant with the code of practice. They've got no issues to report back to the committee. CMT are happy that we are also compliant with the code. And again, there were some actions to strengthen compliance that come out of that assessment, and that can be shown in Appendix 6 of the report. Again, nothing really major to report against non-compliance. There are no areas of non-compliance, just areas to strengthen compliance across the board, really. Section 8 just reaffirms my independent status within the organisation. Obviously, I'm completely independent of any other management or I don't have no other responsibilities other than the fraud team. So there are no sort of issues there in terms of my reporting and independence. Section 9 of the report is the Chief Auditor's opinion. Members would have seen this previously as part of the AGS. Obviously, it forms part of the AGS, which was presented as a draft form in the last committee meeting. So again, just to reiterate really, 66 of the 69 reports issued in the year had a positive assurance level. In relation to the fundamental audits, there are 14 fundamental audits, and 10 of those currently have a high level of assurance, and 3 currently have a substantial level of assurance. So again, that's a positive message and a reassuring level of governance across the organisation. Committee members will be aware of issues in relation to accounts receivable, but members have had regular updates from Ness and Michelle and Rachel in relation to the age debt project, which is making good progress in addressing those issues. We are due to obviously redo that audit in the current financial year, so obviously I'll report back on the outcome of those to the committee, just so you're aware of progress that's been made. That's due to be started imminently, really, for the current financial year, so we shouldn't be too long to get that reported back to you guys. My opinion then is on page 25 in section 9.20. So again, I say basically based on the work undertaken in 24-25, I can confirm that overall adequacy and effectiveness of controls governance, risk management and internal control is effective with no significant weaknesses identified in 24-25. However, I have noted in the opinion the impact of the new risk management system that came in very, very late in March 2025. Just to make members aware, the old risk management system was effective throughout 24-25 up until the end of March. So that doesn't really impact on the 24-25 opinion. But at the time of writing this report and the opinion, the new risk management system had only just been implemented. So at the time, I couldn't really say how well embedded it was within the organisation. So hence the caveat there in the opinion for the new risk management system. Members will likely have reports from Ness and from Richard in the coming months from the new system, so you can reassess this issue then. But I just wanted to caveat that opinion there, really, in terms of unlikely or unexpected experience with the new system to date. But it's not a risk really for 24-25. But it could possibly be something to flag up for 25-26 if that does become an issue. But yeah, thanks, Chair. That's an overall summary. Then we have the appendices from Appendix 1 to Appendix 8 for the report. I think that's a decent summary, Chair. I'm happy to take any questions. Chair, you on mute?
I will forget to switch that on. But I was going to say a comprehensive report, and thank you for that, Simon. I don't think there's an awful lot that people are going to have quibbles about. That's for sure. It's a very satisfactory report, but I'm sure there will be questions. And I notice Julie's got a hand up, and there'll be a couple to follow. So, Julie, if I can call you in first of all.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'm sure I will express the views of all the committee, as already voiced by the Chair, that we're grateful that, given the difficult circumstances that you've operated on during the past year in terms of sickness and absence, that you've been able to provide a rounded audit opinion for 24-25. So thanks to you and your team for that. My questions, I've got a few small questions, Simon, if that's okay. In section 4, performance indicators, you draw attention to the committee, the fact that comparisons are becoming less meaningful and that the Welsh Chief Internal Auditors Group review PIs on an annual basis. Could you tell me when the next review is due, please?
Yeah, thanks, Julie, and thanks for the positive feedback. I'll feed that back to the team in due course. They'll probably watch this meeting back anyway, because they tend to do that anyway, so they'll see the positive feedback. Yeah, the PIs, they are tended to, I think the last full review that we had as a group of chief auditors in Wales was probably about 2 years ago now. And we do tend to review what each local authority use as PIs. We are quite selective. They are up to each individual chief auditor to use which ones they feel fit their organisation best in terms of representing performance. We haven't had a thorough review of them in quite a while, and again, as I say, at the time of compiling this report, there aren't any up-to-date comparators or averages I could use to input into this to give context. What I will do, Julie, if it's okay, I will flag it at the next as an agenda item, the next whole meeting of the group, and just see if we can maybe build that in for a full review in 25-26, because I agree, I do think it is time to look at these to see how relevant they are really across the sector, and to see again if we can need to amend those as part of the new global standards as well. It could be an opportune time to look at building in some different PIs or some different indicators to represent the requirements of the new global standards. That could be a good time to do it.
Yeah. And perhaps if comparators aren't available, it would be worth developing or considering developing a suite of local indicators that you think that would benefit the Swansea audit team.
Yeah, I mean, I'll take that back, Julie. And part of the new standards do also ask me to discuss, PIs with CMT to get their input into what we need to look at as an organisation. So again, that's a discussion I feed back to CMT in due course to see if they've got any input as well, to see what they might think is a good opportunity time to have new or different indicators relevant to Swansea.
Okay, thank you. And that's a nice segue into my next question, which is in respect of CMT. Would you be able to explain the point in the CMT action plan on page 55 in respect of the EQAs? It says the final column reads, confirmed agreed to continue to use Wales Chief Internal Auditors Group, agreed by CMT on the 7th of March 2025. As you're aware, the Audit Committee has previously discussed alternative approaches, and I'm wondering whether these alternative approaches have been shared with CMT for them to consider, or whether you think it's too early because you, as you've said, your last QA was completed last year.
Yeah, thanks for that, Julie. Yeah, as part of the discussions, as part of this assessment with the code, I did obviously give CMT a range of options in terms of the EQA. The chair has raised previously, and I think it was minuted, that she asked us to discuss all opportunities or different options with CMT for their consideration. That was done as part of this assessment, Julie. I did flag, there's the option to go external, to get private sector reviewers to come in. That was quite an in-depth discussion with CMT and with the chief executive. The outcome of that was the existing model works well, in my opinion, and obviously in the chief executive's opinion as well. There is obviously a cost issue in terms of getting an external independent organisation to come in. The cost, I wouldn't really know how to put a value on that, but there would be a cost element because you're contracting in an external provider, basically. The way the existing model works, there is no cost to the authority of the EQA being completed by a fellow chief auditor, and I then do the same for another local authority. So none of the local authorities get charged for the service. It's just a reciprocal arrangement. So obviously there's a cost benefit there. And we did discuss the fact that obviously as a group of chief auditors in Wales, we are probably best equipped to know the ins and outs of the legislation for each local authority, because we're all working from the same code of practice, the same standards, the same interpretations. So based on those discussions, CMT and the chief exec did decide to continue with this approach for now. Obviously, our next EQA is not due until another 3 years' time, essentially, so that could be up for debate by that time. The EQAs need to be completed at least every 5 years, so we've got some time between now and the next one anyway to relook at this. But as part of the discussions around compliance with the code and this particular issue, it was agreed at that meeting that we would continue as is for now, Julie, if that's okay.
Okay, thank you. And as you said, we'll be able to discuss it at some point in the future. And my last comment really was on Appendix 1. I think it might be useful for the committee to have updated scopes for finalised reviews to give us assurance in respect of which risks have been covered during the reviews. At the moment, it still reads as the indicative scopes that were put forward, I think, at the start of the plan. So perhaps going forward, you could consider whether you can update those draft scopes to actual scopes when the review is finalised.
Yeah, just one point on that, Julie. Obviously, when we finalise an audit, the actual scope that is covered is included in the quarterly monitoring report. So in the quarterly reports, you will see for every audit that has been finalised in that quarter, the actual scope is included in that document. This is the template plan, as you would probably recognise from the original approved plan back in April or May last year. So I tend not to update that for duplication of information that's already included in the quarterly reports. So if members did want to see the actual scope of the finalised reviews, that is included in the appendix in the quarterly monitoring reports. If that makes sense, the actual scopes that are included and presented in those reports.
It does make sense, but for ease of understanding the level of assurance that's been given, for example, I'm looking at Oracle Cloud and Fusion project. It's in this Appendix 1, which, as you recognise, an audit plan is a living document, so I would expect it to be updated anyway. The scope is new. Stroke to be confirmed, review of ongoing progress with the project. So I think perhaps it's something for you to consider in the future, that the document should be a standalone document rather than us having to refer to various other pieces of paper or reports that have been submitted to the committee. But it's not something to resolve now. If you couldn't consider it going forward, please.
Yeah, it might be beneficial, obviously, Julie, if I could just do that for the year-end report as opposed to the quarter reports, because then there will be duplication in the quarter reports. So I'm happy to take that back and maybe just put the actual scope in at the end of the year, because obviously that's not then included in this report. It's included, it would otherwise be included twice in the quarterly reports, if that makes sense, because an updated
Right.
version of the plan is also included in that report. So yeah, I'm happy to maybe just amend this for the end of year report to get the most up-to-date scope for that one report at the end of the year.
Okay, thank
Yeah.
you.
Thanks.
Thank you for that. I noticed the deputy leader has joined us, so welcome to you, Andrea, as well. Next person who's going to ask a question, I think, is David. David, please.
Thanks, Chair. Hiya, Simon.
Hi, Dave.
Afternoon. Thanks for the report. As has already been mentioned, a good piece of work, and obviously encapsulates the whole year end really, and of what we've had each quarter the past 12 months. Can I just ask you about the resource? You mentioned in your report, obviously, the number of days lost through sickness and absence. But if memory serves me right, during quarter 3 and quarter 4, you actually mentioned, obviously, quite a successful recruitment campaign. So is the picture as we go into this year, we're into quarter 1 now, obviously, but is the picture far better than it was a year ago in regard to the number of resources and obviously the number of hours in the service? Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, David. Obviously, you've been made aware of the issues with resourcing and absences, etc., throughout the year. And again, as you said, we did have a very successful campaign in quarter 3, the end of quarter 3, early quarter 4. So we now have full complemented staff. Ironically, I've just started doing the quarter 1 report, and the stats for the quarter 1 to date are a lot better, far more positive. There are no vacancies basically from end of quarter 3 onwards. So at this point, there are no vacancies. There's no time lost to vacancies, and sickness is down quite a lot as well through quarter 1. So yeah, it's very positive. Touch wood, Dave. We're in a good place for now. We'll have to see how things pan out, but yeah, it is a positive picture. So yeah, I just wanted to feed that back. Good question. Thanks.
Okay, well, I mean, obviously, we look forward to the next quarters this year in regard to that staffing resource, and keep an eye on that, really. Just my last final point, really, a few of the points have been mentioned by Julie previously, but just in regard to your, obviously, an excellent paragraph on the key regulatory changes on paragraph 6 and 7, obviously gives us an insight of the challenges ahead. But equally, you mentioned the local challenge around risk management systems and the new one coming in. What are the other key challenges you see going forward this year? Thanks, Simon.
Yeah, thanks, Dave. I think I wouldn't say risk is a challenge. The reason I caveated that in this report is because obviously at the end of the year and at the time of compiling the opinion, it's still early days in terms of its implementation and its bedding into the organisation. A lot of work has been done by Ness and her team to get the new system up and running. It is in place. It's just, I wouldn't say it's a risk. I just say it's something to keep an open view on, really, should we say, just to make sure that the members are, looking at how embedded it is, how effective it is going forward. And obviously, risk is one of the key elements of the terms of reference of this committee. And I know the chair and yourselves are quite keen on risk in that regard. So it's just something to flag up separately, really, in terms of overview, and just flag it up as a possible area of more interrogation, shall we say, going forward over the next couple of months, just to make sure things are as they should be. Again, I would have said this time last year resource would be an issue, but as I said previously, that's not really a problem at this point. And again, Dave, you mentioned the legislative changes. Again, I was a little bit apprehensive, I won't lie, because I wasn't really sure what was coming our way. The chair did mention that these were sort of released back in 2024. But as of February 2025, we were still waiting for the final legislation to come through from SIPFA. So it is quite short, quite a short-term amount of time for people to look at that and see what we have to put in place. A lot of work has been put into checking our compliance against all the various new standards, the code, and the application note. So I'm far more relaxed at this point in terms of our compliance, and I'm quite happy with that as we stand. Obviously, CMT and Ben as the 151 has an open, as an overview of all of that compliance as well. So it's not just myself doing the assessments. CMT have been very involved in checking things as well. So I'm quietly confident, Dave, that when it comes to the end of next year, we'll be more or less fully compliant. There's only small minor, changes to put in place as shown in the action plans in the report. But yeah, I've got nothing really majorly to raise the concern.
Okay, and can I congratulate you? I think you mentioned that towards the end of quarter 4, you develop your own checklist in regards to the new regulations. So can I congratulate you on that bit of proactive work, really, in obviously getting ahead of the game, as we say. Thanks, Simon. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Dave. Yeah, in terms of that checklist, just to put it into context, SIPFA issued one a few years ago to check compliance with the public sector standards, and that stretched to about 300 odd lines of compliance. The version I've compiled is a direct duplicate in terms of format of that SIPFA checklist based on the new global standards and also the differences in the application note. I haven't included it in the pack, Dave, because it stretches to over 50 pages and it's 235 lines of compliance. So it is very detailed. I'm sure CMT has really enjoyed reviewing that in terms of their check-in, but it is detailed. I'm a stickler for detail, as you'd expect. So yeah, thanks for that feedback.
Okay, thank you, Simon. Thank you.
Hi, David. Gordon, you have a question?
Yes, yeah. Thank you, Simon. Simon, I don't pretend to understand the details of the GIAS and the SIPFA codes of practice, but I'm surprised that we can be compliant in both without IT skills in the audit team. Having just topped up your staff resource now, what proposals do you have to introduce those skills into your team?
Yeah, thanks, Gordon. The standards don't actually stipulate the necessary IT requirements for audit. They just stipulate that the team have to have the relevant applicable skills. The committees, as raised in the last external review, the only partial compliance issue that we had as part of that assessment was a lack of dedicated IT resource in the team. We agreed to maybe try and outsource that or buy in that skill set, but we're actually pending the outcome of an Audit Wales review of cybersecurity. And the outcome of that will stipulate whether we need to buy in specific IT audit resource to look at particular areas. That is still on the cards for 25-26, Gordon. You will see in one of the updated action plans to the external peer review on page, bear with me a second, on page 46. The intention there was to buy it in, and I've updated that from March to say that we're looking to buy that skill set in pending the outcome of that Audit Wales review. So it is something on our radar, Gordon, and we are looking into that as we go forward. But again, we are waiting for the outcome of the Audit Wales report on cybersecurity before we take any action on that.
Okay. Did you have your hand up, Leslie?
No, thanks, Paxton.
Oh, my apologies then. Okay, I was told you probably had, but there we go. In that case, are there any other questions? I think everything that I would have asked has already been covered, because really there's not an awful lot of queries coming out of this report in many ways, which I think is really a compliment both to Simon and his team. So I hope you will take that back for us. And just to say on this basis, thank you very much for all that you've done in this past 12 months in terms of this report. And we will look forward to getting just as good a report next year. Or you'll have to answer for it otherwise.
Yeah, thanks for the positive feedback, everybody, on the chair. As I say, all of my team tend to watch these back these days to see what's happened in committee, so they'll see the feedback firsthand. But I will make sure that they get that feedback directly as well. So thanks all for your positive comments, and hopefully, as you say, Paxton, we'll have a good picture this time next year as well. Hopefully a bit better, maybe better. We'll have to see how things go. But yeah, thanks again, everybody, for your support.
Okay, thank you. If I can now move on the agenda in terms of the two reports that we've had. First of all, item 6 is the Brangwyn Hall. Sorry, well, number 6 I got on this list, but there we go. Pardon? Oh, sorry, I missed the annual report out. Just as well, I got somebody to keep track of me. I must admit, because otherwise I would get shot. You've all had a chance to have a read of that. That will be presented to the next full council meeting. Anybody got any comments?
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Chair. And I have spoken to the Chair prior to today's meeting. I just think, in view of the regulatory changes which you already mentioned in the previous item, and obviously we've had briefings on this the last few months, I think in paragraph 4, There should be a section on that in regard to these regulatory changes. So as I said, I have spoken to the chair, and obviously that'll be looked at in regard to the draft. It is mentioned in the revised terms of reference at the end of this paper. So I just think it particularly needs noting in section 4. Thank you.
Thanks, David. Anybody else got any comments? Now we have this time, Leslie, haven't we?
Yeah, thanks. I've actually run this past both Simon and the chair, but as she was obviously busy getting on her cruise, she just came back and told me that she was going. 2.5 is a slightly pedantic point, but it actually says the word this draft report. Now, I know the report at the moment is draft, but I feel that that's referring to the report in general. So maybe just change the wording slightly to this report currently in its draft stage, because eventually the report will go ahead in its final version. I don't know if others understand what I'm getting at.
Yes. I'm sure that Jeremy will acknowledge that. Anybody else got any comments? I thought I'd better try and prove that I'd read through it as well, and I found a paragraph 5.2 where it refers to Audit Wales, and I think the final sentence in that paragraph doesn't quite read properly. It either says from the Audit Wales, whatever, because there's a word missing, or you can take out the before Audit Wales. But that was purely to try and show that I had actually read the report myself. It is a bit nitpicking, but I think it's something that we need to look at. Alan? Simon, you got a question?
Yeah, thanks, Paxton. It's not really a question. I just wanted to obviously highlight, members would have seen the update to the terms of reference. I think that was included as part of the audit charter that came to the committee previously. The new global standards ask us to make reference to those in the terms of reference of the committee. So those areas are highlighted in red on page 29 of the agenda pack. I think members already approved those amendments previously, so they are just due to go to council for ultimate approval in due course when this final report goes to that council. I think it's due in September, is it, Jeremy? So it says here for information. I just wanted to highlight that, and obviously you've agreed those changes previously anyway.
Yeah, due on the 3rd of September, council.
Okay, thanks.
Points. We will move on. Move on to the item of the Brangwyn Hall Audit Report 2024-25. Are you going to introduce this first of all, Simon, or do we go straight to one of the Tracy's on this?
No, Chair, I think we've got representatives from client department here to present the report. I think it's either Tracy or either of the Tracy's, actually, Tracy McNulty or Tracy Alicott are here to present the report.
I suspect Tracy McNulty is the person who's going to present this for us at the moment. Am I right, Tracy?
Well, half right, Chair, thank you. I was just going to set the context and then hand over to Tracy Elcott and Grant McFarlane, who is the manager of Swansea Theatres. In respect of the introduction to the report, just thank you to Simon and your team for the thorough audit. We accept the findings and the recommendations. You will see that the majority of those are implemented. I won't go through the detail of those. I'll leave it to the team to be able to introduce themselves and describe what has and hasn't happened. I wanted to just take a moment, though, to set the context. Many of you will remember that, after the Brangwyn reopened around about 2014, it had undergone an extensive refurbishment, and we had a very small team still running that venue, and for many years through austerity and then into COVID, it effectively ran as a hall for hire. So over the last few years, we have put in place the opportunity to merge the Brangwyn with the Grand Theatre operationally, so that we have a more robust team, more wraparound support for Tracy, who had, I suppose, been chief bottle washer, operating staff, sanding the floor during COVID. I mean, you name it. So we are in the process of making sure that those systems and processes are aligned, and we are, you know, really coming out the other side of that transformation of the operating model into a more commercial venue, capable of taking touring productions and being able to punch its weight. So context being a process of change, a movement in its business model from hall for hire through to being a commercial receiving venue, community space and performance hall. So that's just the context in terms of the findings of that audit, and why we'll be able to demonstrate how we've managed to quite rapidly make sure the action plan is implemented. So is that with you, Tracy, or Grant? Which one of you? Grant, I'll leave you to introduce yourself. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Tracy, and thank you, Chair. I am Grant McFarlane. I manage both Brangwyn Hall and the Swansea Grand Theatre. I think Tracy's covered a lot of what I was saying, so forgive me if I sort of reiterate a little bit. But I'd also like to thank the audit team for their work on this report. It's given us challenges, but has been invaluable really in allowing us to address the areas of business risk in a holistic fashion. Across the section rather, and not limited to, to Brangwyn Hall. The processes adopted by the Grand Theatre have been tested by a recent audit and found to be robust with a high assurance rating. And these established processes have given us a sort of an ideal platform to which we could migrate many of the Brangwyn financial systems. We've been able to take a number of those systems which have been operating independently across Brangwyn Hall and the Grand Theatre, as Tracy alluded to, the sort of the separation of the venues, and stream them into a single workflow, thereby improving both accuracy and efficiency. And by adopting this course of action, we've not only addressed the recommendations within the report, but also provided some much needed administrative support to Brangwyn Hall and its management. I'm pleased to be able to confirm to the committee members that all the actions recommended in the report have been addressed. I think one of which has yet to reach 100% completion, and there will no doubt be further improvement to be made in the practical implementation. But I'm confident that the solutions as agreed in the report and subsequently implemented will satisfy any follow-up audit reports. And really, I think I'll just open to questions.
Thank you, Grant. Thank you, Tracy. I'm looking for questions. I've got a few, but I'm going to start in the room here with David, if I may, first of all, please.
Thank you, Chair. It's just on paragraph 28. It mentions obviously now the process in place to ensure financial compliance with the contract procurement rules. But then the end of that is a bit contradictory in regards to non-participation in anything wider with the council. I just wanted to sort of understand what that meant, but equally gauge the risk around that, if there is a risk at all. If you could just clarify. Thank you.
Certainly, certainly as much as I can. So we have systems in place now across the section that will monitor the accumulated spend with any individual, and and searchable within that, for any particular vendor. However, what we don't have at this point is something that expands council-wide, and I do believe that's the subject of a larger piece of work elsewhere in the council.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you.
Julie, you got your hand up?
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to everyone for presenting this report. It was concerning to read that 7 recommendations were brought forward from a previous audit report 5 years ago, but thank you for addressing that. And I know the Grand Theatre from previous presentations had a moderate report. and they took on board every recommendation, and it's refreshing to understand now that you are doing the same with Brangwyn Hall. So we look forward to having an improvement in the systems and procedures. Questions well, the first one is not directed at yourselves, but I have a concern that accounts receivable has done a lot of work throughout the council over the past couple of years through CMT and performance and monitoring groups to ensure that credit is never offered to debtors unless it's absolutely necessary. And I'm quite surprised that this this information hasn't been filtered down to the individual services. So I think that's perhaps a question that can be taken by Ness when she's next at the committee, if that's okay, Jeremy.
Yeah,
And
thank you, Julie, noted.
Thank you. And my question to Simon is, when is the follow-up review scheduled for, please, Simon?
Thanks, Julie. Yeah, this report was issued in Q4. It was included in the Q4 monitoring report last meeting. The follow-ups are due to be completed in Q3 or Q4 of this financial year, probably towards the end of Q3. Again, that's not been confirmed with client department yet. It depends on their availability as well, but we would normally pencil it in for Q3 in the current financial year. So between October to December, really, Julie, that's when we do both this follow-up and the stores follow-up as well, which is the next report.
Okay, thank you.
Just another point, obviously, on Julie. Ness has actually joined the meeting, so I'm not sure if she caught the question you mentioned. You might want to rephrase it if she's only recently joined the meeting, but I think she's happy to make a comment.
I'd like to say something on that as well, please. Sorry.
Thank you.
If it's okay, Chair, may I say something on what Julie was to ask of Ness, because it would probably be a bit of a surprise for Ness. I would say the message has filtered through from heads of service down through to managers. In the case with the Brangwyn, my assumption on this is that those have been long-standing relationships where there is a payment plan in place, and that we now need to make sure there's a formal arrangement with respect to why we may or may not have payment plans. Quite a few within the broader service, quite a few of our accounts receivable appear to be in lag because we may have a kind of monthly payment schemes in place for someone, so they wouldn't necessarily be paying a whole year's worth of something up front. And I also wanted to say something about procurement as well, because we're slightly outside of some of the corporate processes purely because we don't tender for a jazz musician. We won't ask people to apply to come and do a jazz concert. We will book Jules Holland. So there is there's a caveat in our corporate procedural rules that applies to that. And with hires, as I say, with the debtor, it may be that someone has been hiring it for, I don't know, a particular event that meets our corporate priorities, and we may have a lag in how we are chasing up that debt as well. So it is a bit case by case, but I want to spare Ness the pain of saying why the message hasn't filtered through. I can assure you it really has. Thank you.
Thank you for clarifying. And can you also clarify that where waivers of contract procedure rules should be in place, that they are actually in place?
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you both. Thank you, Tracy. Ness, did you want to come in?
No, I think Tracy's covered it. I'm apologies for being late, and now I've heard Tracy's response. I have picked up the question that Julie asked, but hopefully, Julie, you've had the answer that you needed.
Okay, thanks. Leslie,
sorry, Chair. Could I just add a little bit to that as well, to Julie's question, in terms of quite often there will be a series of bookings. And actually, we're not aware of debt building up or debt from a previous booking, and we end up in a situation where actually to cancel a thing might actually cause more reputational damage than the debt is worth. That said, there is now a process in place that any booking being taken is being referred to a debtors list so that we don't take them in the first place. Thank you. That's really all I wanted to add.
Okay, I think that's
Thank
probably
you.
quite reassuring for members. Leslie, did you have a question?
Yes, Chair. Very pleased to hear that the Brangwyn are going to work with the Grand, because by the sounds of it, the Grand have now improved on their performance. So it strikes me only sensible that the two should work together. And if you can use systems that match up, fine. I'm sure there'll be some areas where that won't apply, but obviously as far as possible it will probably cut down on administration, etc., and also cut down on some of these issues that we've heard of where somebody doesn't know something because it's not filtered through to them. So hopefully that will get better. The one question I wanted to just check, it in paragraph 10, and it might not be something, it might be a general question, I'm not sure. It says that there, to see if there was a standard supplier interrogation report, and apparently there wasn't. Now, is there going to be, or is there another way of getting around this?
Somebody want to answer that?
I can say a little bit about it, but I think it's a question for our corporate finance colleagues, perhaps. We have become aware within the wider authority that it's quite difficult to trace every single contract that every single different department might enter into with one supplier in order to get that single view. Certainly was my understanding at the time this audit was done. And I'll give you an example. Some time ago, we tried to identify every single officer in the council who may be commissioning a local mural company. And it was really hard. We had to kind of do it manually. We had to contact everyone and ask what they'd done it, because the way that the ordering was set up didn't allow a single run right across the board. So that was my understanding of what that paragraph meant. And it could be, someone who supplies toilet paper, for example, not understanding all the schools purchasing and our purchasing. So it ranges across a huge amount of suppliers.
Did you want to come back as well, Grant?
I think this touches on the question, or one of the previous questions, and it's so we've established that Oracle hasn't got that capacity. I think that is the subject of a larger piece of work that is already being addressed within the council. Whether it's possible or not, I have no idea and couldn't possibly comment. But this is where we put in our own little mini version, if you like, to be able to monitor across the section at least. Some of our suppliers are kind of not bespoke, but they're specialist. So a lot of the stuff that we're purchasing actually is not really applicable elsewhere. So by monitoring our own section, we're doing pretty much all we can do to defend against this.
Okay, thank you, Grant.
Can I just come back then?
Yeah,
I think this is quite important, and obviously it relates to the bigger picture across the council, and hopefully this issue will be passed back to whoever's relevant to look at it. Thank you.
Thank you, Leslie. Mike, you got your hand up. Mike White.
Right, hello there. Could
sorry.
I ask a question? Sorry, am I in?
Yeah, carry on. Sorry, I don't get a hand.
Yeah, that's
for you,
okay.
I'm afraid.
That's okay. Thank you very much. Can I ask a question? Is there a significant level of outstanding debt owed to the Grand Theatre and owed to the actual Brangwyn Hall? Outstanding debt is more than a year, rather than
The answer to that is no. There is no significant amount. No, correct.
Okay, that's good. That's good. Thank you.
Sorry, Mike. For the little screen I got in front of me, didn't show me your hand, so my apologies on that score. Mike White then.
Yeah, I did see Councillor Locke's hand up there before me, but anyway, it's in relation to page 85 regarding the procurement procedures. Have all staff had procurement training? And in the event of new staff coming on, we should ensure that those new staff has the appropriate training in regards to procurement, the corporate process for areas of service. Because, as you know, within the audit committee, we have quite a lot of issues related around procurement with cross departments. I'm not sure of what the actual procedure is on the process, but I know that we did carry out in-depth procurement scrutiny inquiry, and that was one of the recommendations that obviously procurement officers would be able to provide that training for officers from the departments across the council.
I think the answer to both your questions is yes. So the officers do receive training, and new people coming in also receive training. I'm not going to comment too hard in terms of where refresher might be useful, but yes, the training is there. Sorry, I saw Tracy was popping her hand up, and I think in response to this as well, I'll pass across.
Well, thanks. Just to give assurance that, you know, all our officers have regularly have to update themselves on our recently changing procurement legislation. A part of briefings that gets cascaded down. They also, all our officers also have spending bandwidth that restricts what they can and can't, and I authorise everything, all purchases and contracts, you know, whether that's from someone buying gaffer tape on a P card through to, you know, a large supply for a lighting rig installation. Everybody understands the levels that they are authorised to, and annually we have our manager's assurance statements as well, which compels staff to confirm that they understand their limitations also. I don't have any concerns in that respect, Councillor.
I don't see any more hands up, so in that sense, I haven't got anything myself, because I think everything has been covered in that respect. Obviously, we will be keeping an eye on this going forward. I think it'll be done through the tracker system rather than asking you to come back at this stage, but that is yet to be confirmed. But there's one thing I want to say before I close this session. Nothing to do with actually this report, but I would like to say that obviously last year I was Lord Mayor, and I attended a number of functions in the Brangwyn, and I'm thinking particularly 16th and 17th of October. On the 16th we had the South Wales Police Awards evening, and then the following morning we had the opening ceremony for the Poppy Appeal by 11 o'clock. All I got to say is I was really impressed with the way that had been the hall had been transformed overnight. My congratulations to everybody who did it. Every time I was there as Lord Mayor, I was really proud to be there. So in terms of what you said on the administration side, I understand that, and we have to keep an eye on it, but I would like to give you my thanks for the work that you do in presenting a very positive face to a public face in Swansea. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair.
Simon, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Just in relation to the outcome of the follow-ups for these two moderate reports, they will be included in the summaries in the quarterly moderate reports that will be due towards the end of the year. And we do go out and retest the medium and high risk areas that are recommended. So they will be retesting some of those points as well. So again, just to reiterate, you will get some detailed feedback on the follow-up outcome in due course, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Simon. On that basis, I'll move on to the next item on the agenda, which is obviously the report that we have in respect of Hale Lagos. And I think it's it is Rachel who's going to pick this up. Rachel, are you there?
Afternoon, Chair. Yes, I'm here.
The floor is yours.
Lovely, brilliant. Thanks very much, Chair, and good afternoon, members. I just would like to just bring out some very quick points from the report. Just first of all, like to thank audit colleagues and like our colleagues for the Brangwyn Hall, we fully accepted the findings and the recommendations. The review looked at 9 areas in total, 4 of which they deemed it to be satisfactory. That was income, travelling expenses, employee records, and GDPR, with no significant issues were raised. Pleased to report that no high-risk items were identified, and the report does pull out just the main 7 medium-risk items that were covered, and then that translates into an action plan of 22 items across some of the areas such as expenditure, P cards, inventory, petty cash, and in particular stores. 15 of the actions have been completed, and the action plan has very clear dates for implementation of the remaining 7. Some of the items have been quite easily rectified. It was simply meaning of tightening up of processes and reminding officers just on how to undertake, just to keep the controls and measures in place across the service. Some of the actions of improvement do require improvements in digital systems, which you'll see in the action plan. And I can advise there is close work ongoing with the Fusion team so that we can improve our controls. The report does indicate that there's sort of like, a wider piece of work in terms of wider systems and modernisation to reduce our reliance on manual entry. And I can indicate that work is ongoing. And finally, I'd just like to thank Vicky, who's our finance and administrative group leader, for the work on this, and the colleagues for, very quickly implementing many of the recommendations and working hard on testing some new parts of the systems that we've adopted to ensure that we improve our rating when audit do return. So happy to hand over now for any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Rachel. Anybody have any questions for Rachel? Julie, you got your hand up?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for presenting the report. I recognise and welcome your intention to implement a full systems review, and I also recognise the fact that Oracle Fusion may not have a sufficiently robust store system to cope with large operations such as building services. But human error seems to account for several of the findings, including, for example, at point 14 in respect of stock tags. In an ideal world, if stocks in and out were accurately recorded, then there should in theory be no difference between the valuation report and the stock take sheets. So could you outline what is being done in the interim pending this multi-year review to achieve improvements to recording by the individuals operating the system, please?
Thanks,
All yours,
Davis.
Rachel.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you. Can I just also ask Vicky to come in to talk through this section 14 of the report? I know Vicky Collard is on the call. Reason being that there is sort of like a process in place around the Fusion and when items. So if we've had items in during the year that at stock take time, there's the min-max system indicates that it's 0. Then when we run the audit, the stock take report, that item won't feature on it, is what that is saying. That's right, isn't it, Vicky?
Yeah, that's correct. We were expecting when we run the stock take report to have every item that we purchased through the year, even if the balance was 0, because there's another report that's run that shows what is purchased through the year. So we had concern the fact that 2 different reports didn't tally up, and it was due to the fact that some of the items were 0, which we weren't made aware of when we ran the reports originally. So it's not necessarily it was down to human error. It was expectations as to what you would expect to see in the report compared to what was in the actual report.
So I think what we're liaising with the Fusion team, and also then, because at a stock take, you want to have crystal view on everything you've had on the shelves during the year. And even if it's at 0 at the end of the year, you'd want it to say that we might have had 340 through, for example, but at this moment in time, there's 0, because tomorrow there might be another delivery and they go back on. So I think, so it's that reconciliation, and, you know, and this is where we're using, you know, the corporate system, which works for the majority of our work, and, you know, but we will then, that needs to then come forward as part of that systemic piece of work if the overall systems review, if the fusion system just cannot, because of its functionality, you know, change those processes. So yeah, that wasn't a human error one.
Right. So sorry. Thank you for the explanation. Can I just pick up on the final sentence, because it says this limitation makes the stock taking process inaccurate, as the valuation reporting would always be incorrect if there are items on the shelf, although Fusion is showing 0. So, in other words, if you do have stock in stock and the item is shown as 0, there's got to be some inaccuracy in the stock out process. Something hasn't been properly recorded because it's still on the shelf. So I don't fully accept that is purely a system error. I think there's got to be an element of manual input into that to cause the inaccuracies.
Yeah.
I may be wrong, but, you know, please, perhaps you can look at that side of it as well as just the Fusion side.
Yeah, absolutely. And Vicky and I've already had this, you know, in terms of, you know, do we do mini stock takes through the year on particular sections is what we've talked about. And so obviously a whole stock take means we take stores out of action for a couple of days once a year. That's not feasible a couple of times a year, but actually taking out small sections a couple of times a year to keep on top of that control mechanism is something that we've discussed and can look to take forward. Whilst we move to that wider system issue where hopefully would be scanning items in and out and wouldn't rely on any manual entry.
Yeah, thank you. I think rolling stock takes are quite a practical solution to this in the interim. Thank you.
No problem.
Okay. Mike White.
Chair, I think Councillor Walton was before me.
Well, okay. Leslie. Sorry.
That's okay. Thanks, Mike. I've got 2 or 3 points. 2 still on Fusion. I can see what Julie's getting at, and I must admit I'm slightly confused about it because I don't quite get how can Fusion say 0 if there's definitely stock over there. But maybe this is more complex issue that needs to look more at what Fusion's doing. I don't know, but I think it's something that we need to bear in mind and come back to. Similarly, though, on slightly more positive note, I'm pleased that in point 5, there's this issue that sometimes a box will be automatically filled with the default. Great idea, except it's so easy to think at default's right, let's go on to the next one. So I'm pleased that that's been looked at, and I think the golden rule in a way is try not to have too many defaults because it's so easy to accept them and not think enough about what it should say. The final point I was just a bit concerned about, the point 7, where the store buyers were under the impression that a contract had been agreed with a particular company. Has something been put in place to avoid that happening again? Because obviously you could go really a long way down the line using that company and then find out, oh, we don't want to use them, and you've already forked out a lot of money on them. So thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Walton. Yeah, so on that last question, yeah, the buyers, you know, the people placing the order, etc., have now been tasked to ask the people who are saying, can you get me this, can you get me that, to actually check that there's a contract in place. One of the things we're also doing is putting a comprehensive contract register in across building services as well. So there is that oversight to ensure that compliance piece that you talk about.
Okay, any other questions? Oh, Mike.
Right, thank you, Chair. Yeah, my question is in relation to point 11 regarding the paying of parking fines for staff. Now, surely we've obviously got staff, especially in social services. We've got to go out on shift work as well, go out on social hours of the day as well. And clearly there's a system in place where there's exemption. Surely we should be sort of joined up across departments, especially within the corporate building services, where tenants are in need of urgent assistance at sometimes, and social hours, that we could perhaps look at a sort of exemption permit scheme for the staff that are on call who have to carry out these duties.
Yeah. Thanks, Councillor White. Now, this one in particular was actually a breach of the parking regulations. There was no need for the operative to park where they were. So they did pay the initial fine. The reason that we picked up the additional cost of the overtime element was because the fine was actually late being received from, so it was an admin error by the council, hence we paid that overpayment, the delayed payment bit, but we did make the operative pay because they shouldn't actually have been parking where they were. So we do look at them on a case by case basis, but the rule is, they know where they should park and where they can park, and in this particular instance there was no need for them to have parked where they did.
I understand what you say here, Rachel, but in some circumstances, in an emergency, it's perhaps that it's the only possible place that staff can park, and I suppose that situation would probably occur, and that perhaps is something that we could perhaps look into for the future.
Yeah. I think that'd be one for like highways to look at in terms of their traffic regulation orders and their car parking policies. Obviously there are some car parks around the council where officers can park and don't need to pay, but just wanted to advise members for this one, it was a particular breach.
Okay, Julie, did you want to come back in?
Yes, apologies. I would like to ask a question which isn't specifically referenced in the report. So if you feel it's inappropriate to respond to me now, perhaps you would be able to do so in writing at a later date. What I'd like to understand is whether there's a robust system, items that are in stock to what's used on the housing estate. So in other words, making sure that, for example, with the Wolsey contract, that items ordered do find their way to a specific home. So I'd like to understand that aspect of it. So it's more looking at trying to look at the end-to-end process rather than just isolated segments of it. Thank you.
Yes. So you'd like, I think what Councillor Davis will actually put that in writing to explain the process of how, those particular, if items come in, to make sure that they're going out to the right place and booked to the right place, and that we've got controls over that. So yeah, we can follow that up in writing.
Thank you very much.
David?
Thank you. Thanks, Chair. Thanks for the report. Can I just draw your attention to the action plan, page 94 of the papers, and paragraph 2.9.2 A and B. Obviously, it mentions that it's been implemented, but I'm just seeking some assurance really in regard to the column in regard to actions agreed. It mentions on the second half there that the risk remains, system will not reconcile what was in the depot. You may well have covered this in your previous responses, but it was just from a risk management perspective, how that was being taken forward. Thank you.
I think that goes back to my rolling stock take risk process that we're looking to put in. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Okay.
I'm not seeing any other hands now. I don't have any questions myself. Do you want to come back in now, Simon, just to sum this up, please? There we go.
Just this report, Chair, is obviously subject to a follow-up that's going to be completed in Q3, Q4, as per the Brangwyn Hall. Again, we'll retest all the medium and high risk recommendations. So we'll do physical testing to check compliance at that time, probably towards the end of December. Again, that's to be agreed with client department based on availability as well. So it's open to change, Chair. But yeah, we'll feed back the detailed outcome of that in the quarter report then in due course. Is that okay, Chair?
Thank you, Simon. This report also surprised me a little bit as well. I talked about the last one in terms of Brangwyn Hall and last year. If I go back a little bit further in time to another existence, I did actually manage the engineering and general stores in British Steel, or what was Tata, what is now Tata, for some time. So I can understand fully the problems that you get from that point of view. I think our stockholding replenishment value would have been somewhere about £200 million. So it was quite a large store compared with what you have, and that didn't include the consumables as well. But on the basis of that, I can fully understand your problems and why we've certainly got to get them sorted out. I can understand the difficulties doing that, and you have my, you always have my sympathy whenever you've got the auditors in, because we always used to be looking over the back of our shoulders as auditors. But I'm not going to say any more on that. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Chair. Appreciate it.
Oh, sorry, those are all reports for the discussion. If I move on to item 8, part B, reports for information. You have seen the tracker report that's in the agenda. Has anybody got any questions for that on for Jeremy? Nope. In that case, I will move on to the last report for information, which is the work plan. Again, that's laid out within the agenda. Anybody got any questions? No, I'm not seeing any in that respect. On that basis, I think I can safely close the meeting just by saying thank you very much to everybody who's involved and for all the contributions that they made. Thank you very much, and hopefully Paul will be sitting there next month and he won't have to put up with me. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you all. Thank you very much.
Bye then.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Many thanks.
Thanks for that.
Right.